Alright, we're going to mount the firewall. You see I epoxied my blind nuts back in there a little bit. I left the edges without epoxy because I'm going to put some triangular stock down the framing. As you can see, when the firewall sits in here, I'm just going to put some triangle stock right down the side, and that's going to help brace up the firewall a little better and heat it so it'll be looking like that. But you can see it's going to touch my blind nuts, so I'm going to need to carve that part out. So I didn't really want to have glue in the way also. So when I epoxy the triangles in, then I'll finish epoxying the blind nuts. It's not a huge big deal. You can just cut around it anyway. But that's what I'm going to do. They're in there pretty good. Drilled my hole for my gas tank. I told you to go ahead and drill 2/4 inch holes. I happen to know where my gas tank's going to be, and I'm using the straight angle tank. So I just made it wide enough so both lines can come through like that at the same time, or you can do 2 separate 1/4 inch holes like I told you, and then you can just run your tubes out from inside and then anywhere you need to run them. And it only needs a 1/4 inch to come out the front. So either way is fine. I decided to go with the bigger hole because my two things are so close together that the 1/4 inch holes are pretty much going to join them anyway. And it's a straight tank. If I had a vertical tank where it was kind of angled like this tank, if you have a tank like that, then it's nice because when it sits in there, the metal tubes aren't right up against the firewall, so then that's where the 1/4 inch holes come in nice. So that's what I was getting at before with that. I probably should have showed you that before, but hey, I messed up. Okay, so what we're going to do here is going to mount the firewall, and I want to talk a little bit about thrust. Okay, when you're dealing with your firewall, you want to put some right thrust on the motor. So there's a couple ways to do that, as we discussed earlier. You can either put some washers right behind the screws before you put your engine mounts down. Find an engine mount. So basically we want to get about 2% right thrust, maybe 1% or 2 down thrust as well. So you can just put some washers right behind here, just lay them on the board before you screw this in, or when you're screwing your engine mount in. You could just put the screws right through it and then put the washers on the back. And you might want maybe 1 or 2 washers, a washer 8 inch thick. Is probably what we're trying to achieve anyway. Another way to do it is to take your left fuselage side, and where your engine plate is, or where your firewall is going to mount up to it, you can take an 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch square, and you're going to see that. I'm trying to do it so you can see. That gets awful dark in there. And just take right at the very back of your line. You can just take the 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch and glue it in. Just zap it right down, right against the very back line. So now you got an 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch piece right there, and then when you put your firewall in, you're going to put it directly on your back line on the top part of the fuselage, on your right fuselage, and you'll put it up against this brace here, and that'll automatically offset it. The reason I'm not going to do it this way on this particular plane is because I'm using a pop hatch, so the front pop hatch will have that little bit of an angle, as you can see. Now I got a little bit of right thrust in there if you're looking at it straight. I don't know if you can really tell or not, but it's just sitting in front of that 1/8 inch piece. So when you put your engine mount on there, you'll have your right thrust of 2 degrees with that 1/8 inch piece right against the back of the wall, and that'll give it to you. Or you can, like I said, just use the washers on the outside, which is what I'm going to do. But with the pop hatch, you're going to have an angle on the front of it. Not that it's a big deal, but I want mine to look straight, so I'm going to just go ahead and put it in here, and I'll offset the thrust with the motor mount. Alright, I've pre-glued or pre-mixed some epoxy up. You want to have your clamps or rubber bands on hand. And we're just going to go ahead and mount the firewall right to the marks you made. So I'm just taking my epoxy and we're just going to generously coat just the sides. That's going to be it, really. Lots of paper towels on hand, and like I said, your clamps rubber bands. Don't get any glue in these corners here because that's where your bracing for your landing gear is going to go, for running down the struts there, or running across the landing gear block. So I got my paper towels on hand, gave it some glue. Not too much, you don't want to have to be scraping everything off. Just enough to bond it in there. Like I said, I'm also going to be using the triangle stock as well. So you want the firewall to be right on your marks. Take a clamp, put that in there. Make sure you're all level. I already did that, but I failed to show you that. And get your cloth on hand to wipe off the excess pretty fast. Like I said, if you're going to do any other bracing, but you want this as square as possible. Alright, a little white thrust going in there. And you want it as level as possible. Like I said, you got 5 minutes to work, but you want the firewall to be flush with the top of your fuselage. Release that clamp a little. So everything's nice and straight. Looks like I'm running perfectly down my lines. Feel good and square. Got just a tiny bit of right angle to that for some odd reason. But that's good because you want right thrust, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm going to line both up on those back lines. That would be right there on my line. Then I'll clamp it down and wipe it down and let it dry. Name of the game, let it dry. So I'm flush on top. I put my square on there, or my level on there, so it's level. Flip that baby right upside down, and just to keep it equal proportions of weight, I got my clamps running in opposite directions here. I just want to apply light pressure on there, just so she sits nice. And there we have it. Let it dry. Okay, and after you're clamped in, just remember to get your paper towel in here and clean off the sides. You want to make sure that it's clear, so if you're going to do what I'm going to do and put some triangle stock or blocks of wood in the sides there just to tighten it up, kind of give it almost like a platform to sit up against and have more epoxy on, and that's fine. I'm going to use an OS61, so I definitely want a little strength up in the front part. And also on the bottom, kind of dry in there. Make sure that you have these grooves underneath. These grooves right here. Make sure you have plenty of, make sure you get your glue on. I can't talk this morning. Make sure you get your glue wiped out of those little, make sure you get your glue wiped out of these little corners here, because you're going to have your 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch pieces running to the back of F2, which is going to fit in that notch as well. So get both of those dried out, let her sit and dry, and there we go, firewall's mounted.